Hello people of YouTube, my name is Tanner and welcome to my channel, the Tanner Diaries. This is my first video on the world of University of California, Riverside, UCR. And this video is going to be specifically talking about transfer orientation. I'm assuming this is something that happens every single quarter for transfers, and obviously first year students get their own orientation as well. All of the information I ever received going into this transfer orientation was because of first year orientations. And a lot of that information I got was actually not good for the transfer orientations. And some of the information I got was extremely outdated because a lot of the posts on forums such as Reddit, which UCR does have its own subreddit, and I go there all the time. I'm on there all the time. I mostly lurk, but I do go on there quite often just to see what people are doing and talking about. But anyway, there is some transfer orientation information on there, but it's extremely outdated because this year, 2022, for the fall 2022 quarter, is the first one they've had since before the COVID pandemic. So a lot of the information on there was completely outdated. It just wasn't correct, and I unfortunately read a lot of it, took that information, and went into mine with this information that just wasn't correct. And the other information, as I previously mentioned, was all from first year orientation. So I think I just want to make this video for anybody going the rest of this week, and hopefully in the next few quarters this information will still be viable for them to continue on and learn from this video. And hopefully some of the stuff on Reddit will become more informational than stuff in the years past. As a matter of fact, there was a Reddit post that garnered quite a lot of popularity with some people on the website, and I actually have tips from that, and I actually have the schedule right here as well that I'll be going through with everybody, and just kind of my own experiences and kind of what happened on my day. I had the very first session, so there was nobody on Reddit that had gone yet, obviously, except for, as I previously mentioned, all those years ago. They did have orientation only online for the past, I believe, 2 years. The first steps are to register for transfer orientation, and if you're watching this video, you probably have already done that. So I'm not going to talk about that process, but it is kind of an annoying process. It costs money, unfortunately. I don't understand how they can make something mandatory that costs money, but I guess in the same topic, registering for classes is costly, and those are mandatory. They say to show up at 8. I showed up around 8:05, 8:10. There was a lot of traffic. It is what it is. They say on their official schedule, check-in lasts until 8:30, but it actually lasted until about 9:10, and people actually showed up late. It wasn't in my group, but it was a group that was often behind us. They actually had a person come way later than they were supposed to. I believe it was already after the first set of like lectures or information presentations, whatever you want to call them, and they ended up being over an hour, almost 2 hours late, according to the schedule, if I recall when exactly they joined their group. But the first kind of event after check-in is called a student to student, and this is technically where all of the group members and the orientation leader, otherwise referred to as an OL, and that's how I will be referring to them for the rest of this video. Orientation leader means OL. This is where the group members and the OL are designated to talk to each other, find out about each other, interest, things like that, icebreakers, if you will. My OL didn't do that. My OL simply was like, this is where we are, this is where we're going, this is what we're going to be doing today, do you have any questions? And people were sometimes asking questions, sometimes not. My OL was extremely nice. She was, I mean, from what I could tell, she was a pretty cool person. Of course, you know, I didn't get to know her personally or anything like that. I didn't get to know anybody in my group personally, but I could tell that she was very nice, and she didn't have a lot of the information. This was her first time doing the transfer orientations, I had asked later in the day if she had to do more transfer orientations. She kind of implied that she did multiple first-year orientations, but not a lot of them. But this was her first transfer orientation the day I had her. So hopefully, as she learns more and as she continues on with transfer orientation, she'll have more information as more of the common questions keep popping up. I asked her 2 questions that had to do with this school itself and 1 personal question, and that was the only time I talked to her, except for the very end. I like thanked her for the day and just said that she did a good job and stuff like that. But aside from that, the only other question I asked her was like if I could go downstairs in the dining hall, and I asked her about this advising module thing, and I asked her about like signing up for classes, which the last 2 questions she didn't have the answer for, but she had to go ask someone, which is perfectly fine. You know, I'd rather someone go ask themselves to get proper information than to give me not proper information, you know? So I didn't blame her for that. It was a break in the day. Everyone was kind of inside, like, there was a separate room that we took a break by, and there was a couple water stations, bathrooms and stuff, and there was AC, and it's in the middle of August in the Inland Empire, so people were obviously wanting to cool down. Not a lot of desert rats out there, you know, who are from the IE, but people will get used to it in time, I'm sure. But anyway, after, again, what's referred to as the student-to-student, the first one, we go into this giant lecture hall, a huge lecture hall, and unfortunately for our day, the AC was actually down. So you have, you know, 200 people in the same room on a 100-degree day. Well, at this point, it was probably like 90 degrees, but on a 100-degree max day, all using their folders to fan themselves off. And they said they were working on the AC, but it never turned on for, you know, about an hour and 10 minutes, I would say. And, oh, well, according to the schedule, it's about 45 minutes, but it was longer than that. It was a little bit longer than that. They kept having an issue with the presentation monitors, and they kept cutting out, and they would pause for not really questions, but they would kind of pause for almost like they were putting emphasis on something, or it wasn't the best presentation I've ever seen in my life, I'll put it that way. After the first kind of lecture, there's 3 different lectures, if you will, presentations, whatever you want to call them. It's a welcoming, it's how to get involved, and then it's kind of like a safety thing, or like how to stay safe when it comes to organizations. And then after that, you walk a little bit, and there's another student to student. At this point, there was only a couple people who were talking in my group. There was 2 people who were pretty inseparable. There was another group of 3 people who were pretty inseparable. And then there was a group of 4 or 5 who kind of chatted, but then they would kind of separate, and then they would get back together and then kind of chatted. I consider myself a very social person. I love talking to people. I'll go up to just like random groups of people and you know, try to talk to them, or if I see someone like sitting down and I think they're interesting, I'll go up and talk to them. Like, I consider myself a pretty social person. I don't have any like social awkwardness or social anxiety or anything like that, and I didn't really fit in with my group. There were 2 or 3 people who I probably could have talked to, but I just kind of chose not to. I don't know if it's just college or what it is, but maybe I'm thinking that maybe my personality won't really mesh with a lot of the people inside of a university. After that, student to student 2, which again, ROL was just asking if we had questions. And I will give you one piece of advice. If your OL is quiet and you want to hear everything they say, move closer. My OL was extremely quiet. There's groups behind you and in front of you or to your side at all times. And if your OL isn't loud, not necessarily shouting, right? You don't want your OL to be yelling at everybody. But if they aren't loud, projecting their voice, then you're gonna have to move closer to your OL. Whether that means getting close to one of your group mates and maybe wedging yourself in between a couple people, so be it. If you want that information that people are asking, you need to hear that information. And I'll also say that group people probably aren't going to talk very loud. There was one dude who kept asking a bunch of questions, and I only heard like one question because he was talking like this. He was always by the OL, and he was just kind of talking like this. Like, dude, speak up, because there's people 10 feet away from you who need to hear your questions. They might have the same questions, So that's a very real possibility that people could just be very quiet, and you need that information. After the second student to student, you move into a new it was more of a conference room than a lecture hall. So you move to a new conference room, and they talk about financial aid and business services for students. And this lecture was actually funny, because the second guy who spoke was hilarious. He kept telling like jokes and like stuff he did as a student that everybody in the meeting room was very hysterical about things, because this dude was funny. He really was. And I will say though, not a lot of new information. I found that the orientation, and I probably should talk about this at the end, but I found that the entire orientation was useless, to be honest with you. I'm sorry, UCR people, UCR admin, if anybody ever watches this from UCR, don't kick me out of school, but you got to work on your orientation, man. It wasn't good. Anyway, after that second presentation, or fourth and fifth presentation, depending on how you want to look at it, there's lunchtime. Now, lunch, we ate at the Glasgow dining hall, and I think this is like the most popular UCR one. I know that it was really, really packed with regular students. I know there was at least two sports teams who was eating there at the time. There was the women's soccer and the women's volleyball, and I think I saw men's soccer as well, because I know the day of my orientation there was actually a soccer game that night. So I'm assuming they had just gotten done with practice or something that day. But I only saw one male soccer player, but I saw the entire volleyball team, female volleyball team, and the entire female soccer team. So that's why I say at least two, because maybe that male soccer player was just kind of there to be there, But we ate at Glasgow. The food was okay. It wasn't great. I know there's a lot of people on like Reddit and stuff who ask about the food. It wasn't great. A lot of people said that the pizza was good, but I had, I guess you would call it Chinese food, and it wasn't good. It was okay. I definitely wouldn't brag about it to anybody. Oh yeah, I ate at Glasgow and their Chinese food was okay. Yay! No, it wasn't good. But I actually didn't see to the left that there was a whole nother like side option of other stuff. I know a couple people got other things that they said it was good, and then I didn't know we had the option of going downstairs to actually get food and then come back up and eat, because you're supposed to stay with your group, and you can ask your OL if you can go eat. Like, let's say you brought family members or something, you can ask to go eat with them, because every station that they take like attendance or roll call or however you want to put it, but they make sure you're where you need to be. So you can like ask them if you can go downstairs or whatever. And I also read that some groups stayed downstairs, so it's vice versa. You can probably go upstairs if you want to. There's other food options. Like upstairs didn't have any desserts or like salads or anything. That was all downstairs. Nobody in my group knew that, so we were like, okay. I went down and actually talked to my parents for about 10 minutes after I was done eating, because I didn't know that they were actually in the dining hall while I was eating. They got there a little bit later, I think they said. I just went down and talked to them for a little bit. I wasn't impressed, and as a commuter, I don't know how often I'll be eating in Glasgow, but I will say that if I did eat there, I wouldn't be looking forward to it. But can I really judge it off of one meal? I don't know. Anyway, after lunch, you go into workshop rotations, and this was kind of cool but kind of annoying at the same time. The first one I went to was an education abroad, supposed to be a workshop, but The staff member who did it was extremely late, to the point that when she came in, people were already waiting for the next workshop. So take that as you will. If you're really interested in a workshop that they offer at Transfer Orientation, you might not get the information that you want or desire, and you might even want to stay in for a second rotation of that same workshop, just in case you missed information, or in case they didn't talk about everything. It just kind of depends, because she showed us a 2-minute video and was like, okay, that's it, if you want more information just call us, and that was basically it. She gave a little bit of personal experience and basically told us to go to the next workshop. She said we can stay in there for another one, but when I actually left that room, there was probably twice the amount of people waiting to enter the room than there already were in there, and there was only like 2 open seats, with people sitting along the wall, because they were like with friends or whatever, or didn't want to sit next to somebody, which, okay, I understand, but there was like a lot of students waiting for that specific workshop. And it's kind of funny, actually. I was the first one in there for like 5 minutes, and I thought I was actually going to be the only one in there, and then there was like one person that walked in, and then there was like 10 people that walked in, and there was like 6 people that walked in. I was like, Jesus Christ, like, we're already 10 minutes past when the fucking workshop's supposed to start. Like, what's going on? And they couldn't connect to the internet, they couldn't log into their thing, whatever, dude. It was kind of stupid, I'll be honest. But that one ended. I went to the second workshop, which was supposed to be Commuter Programs, because I'm going to be commuting to UCR. So I've always read that like commuters probably have the least amount of the college life, or the college experience, or the social life, because we have to drive back and forth. And I was like, I didn't know commuters had special programs for them, for us. I didn't know that. I know we have our own I know we have our own like area. It's called like the commuter lounge or something like that. But aside from that, I didn't know we had any programs for us specifically. So I thought it was going to be really interested. I was really interested to go down there, and it was only 1 floor down. So I literally left the 3rd floor of the hub. I went down to the 2nd floor, and it's actually kind of like a corner office almost. Like, there's windows, you can see in the windows, and there was still people in there from the first session. And this was, according to their schedule here, 1:10 to 1:35 was the first session. I think I went down at, it was like 1:45. And the second session was 1:40 to 2:05. So I would have been 5 minutes late had it started on time. Well, there was 3 ladies there, and 3 students, and I asked, have you guys been waiting for this workshop? They said yes. They've been waiting for over 5 minutes, and they were still in the very first session. So I was like, okay, thanks. They started talking amongst each other again. I was there just kind of on my phone, whatever. There was no one else there, so it's not like I could have just walked up to someone and be like, ah. They were already having their own conversation. I wasn't going to try to, interrupt their conversation, whatever. And another guy came up to me, a super cool dude. Zach, if you're watching this, what's up, man? Hope you're doing well. But me and him were talking for like 10 minutes. So at this point, it's 1:55. Still nobody's even moved a muscle in that conference room. And that's still the first workshop, might I add. So he was talking to me about a different workshop he wanted to go to, the Career Center, because he I think he told me that he had some opportunity to work on campus, and he just wanted to see how the work-study program worked and everything else. So I was like, I was actually headed there for my 3rd workshop. I wanted to see what it was about as well, because some of the other workshops just really didn't interest me. Just kind of, residential life is one of them, for example. I don't care, because I'm not going to be a resident. Basic needs, I know my basic needs. I'm a grown man, I think, like, okay. So there was just a bunch of other ones I didn't care about. Career Center was the next one I wanted to have some information about. So he said, oh, I don't know where it is. I kind of pointed him. We were talking some more. At this point, it's probably 2 o'clock. which the next one is the third and last one is supposed to be 2:10 to 2:35. So I said, you know what, I'm just going to walk down there with you. I'd prefer to go to this one, but apparently they're never going to leave their building, or their room rather, so let's just go down to the career center. We actually got lost. I had pointed exactly to where it was, but when me and Zach walked down the stairs, there was an OL there, and he asked if we were going to the career center. We both said yes. He said, okay, when you pass these silver bike racks, turn right. Well, we thought he was pointing to a different set of bike racks that happened to be only maybe 20 yards away from us. So we turned right past the first set of silver bike racks that we saw, and we were down this alleyway with like a random car. It was basically behind buildings. Well, that wasn't the career center at all. It was just a random alleyway that utility vehicles went up and down to get places faster. We were lost. We turned around in between, I believe, the Subway and the Coffee Bean right there, like by the Central Hub area, and we walked down these steps, and that same OL was like, what happened? We're like, dude, we got lost. And he was pointing before we even done the stairs, and I was like, yeah, dude, like, we're coming, okay, we get it now. And I was like, I thought you meant these bike racks. And you know what he said to me? He said, oh, I didn't even see those. Bro, you're an OL. You're supposed to know the entire information about the school. You pointed us right at these freaking silver bike racks. But it turns out there were silver bike racks way down farther, probably, you know, like about a block. So I would say, like, what's a block? Like 200 feet or something? I don't know. But it was way down there, and then there was like one more OL on this grassy shaded area, and she asked if we were all going to this career center. Well, it turns out it's a right turn, and there's a giant sign like on a building that says career center. Whatever. So we get there. At this point, it's like 2:10, which is exactly where the next one is gonna start. So we're right on time. But guess what? The previous workshop is still in there. It's only supposed to last until 2:35. Well, me and Zach are still talking. Another person joins our conversation. Great, perfect. I never caught his name, never talked to him again, never saw him again. He was a cool dude though. It would have been nice to talk to him some more, but everybody was exiting. This was probably about 2:15, 2:20, so we're 5 to 10 minutes past schedule. And all of a sudden, people are waiting to get in, but we have to sign in to a place where we already signed in to be there for. I forgot my email, so I had to look on my app, and then all of a sudden, boom, she runs out of pamphlets. So now at this point, everyone's starting to file in, and it turns out that the professor or the career center staff member, whoever she was, a career center advisor, I think is what her title is. Holy Moses. She was a really cool person. She was a really great person. I actually really enjoyed how she talked, and I would feel like if she was a professor, I'd want to take her classes. But with that said, wow, she talked very slowly. It wasn't slow enough. She wasn't monotone though. She was very upbeat and excited to talk about what she's talking about, and it was very contagious. I felt her energy. I wanted to listen to her, but she was talked extremely slow, and it was kind of funny. I laughed in my head a bit because I didn't want to laugh at her, but she kept saying, oh, and this is rapid fire, but it was extremely slow, which I found funny. But we ended up leaving the building at around 2:50, which again, the third workshop was supposed to end at 2:35, so this is 15 minutes past schedule. And we walked back around to the hub, and there was only about 2 groups left that weren't walking up to the second floor of the hub. And actually the third story, the third story of the hub is actually where we went to next. I'm sorry. Yeah, hub 302. This is actually where I got separated from my group. Apparently the attendance and the roll call isn't exactly as precise as the orientation masters therein would like, because, hello, yours truly was missing. I guess I'm just a very forgettable person. I don't know. I didn't really care. I was like, okay, I guess I'll find him eventually. I don't know. I ended up having to sit with an entirely different group, wedged between two people who weren't very respectful of other people's space. I'll tell you that. And if anybody's watching this that recognizes me, sorry to say that, but we're in chairs that are this close together, you know. Very uncomfortable chairs, rubbing thighs with everybody, you know. It's just not, it just isn't set up good. I think that's my thing. It just isn't set up good. And keep in mind, the first session is smaller than every other session, because it's like special students. So it's like Regent scholars, Chancellor scholars, athletes, honor students, students with disabilities, and I think there's one more, like, special accommodation. I'm a Regent scholar, so I was able to get into that first session. So the second through, fifth session are going to have a lot more people. So keep that in mind as well. If you're able to get that first session, get it. It doesn't matter what you are. If you're a student with a disability, if you're an athlete, if you're an honor student, if you're a Regent scholar such as myself, get it. We also have like an extra day of registration or something like that, so take advantage of it. But anyway, I had to sit in between two people who, you know, didn't really appreciate personal space. I'll say that. But with that said, when those three presentations were done, I ended up getting up before I was dismissed and went back to my group. And you have to fill out these, like, OL satisfaction cards. And I just handed my OL mine and just kind of waited until we were dismissed. I was like the only student standing up besides the OLs, which was whatever. I mean, I don't care, right? Like, if you're gonna look at me, look at me. I don't give a shit. But it was just kind of weird because I had to, like, put my butt cheeks in front of people's faces to leave the rows. Again, like, we're like this close to everybody, and there's about, you know, this much space in between, you know, the back of the seat and our kneecaps. So I was kind of squeezing in and kind of shimmying my way. Luckily, I was only like the sixth person in, so it was only 5 people I had to put my butt cheeks in front of. But but whatever. The other OL whose group I was with, she was like, oh, you know, thank you for joining us today, blah, blah, blah. She was kind of funny. I don't know her name, but she was funny. And anyway, after those 3 presentations are done, which, again, just common sense information, no new information. They were talking to us like we were children, and it's just like, I'm a 24-year-old man, dude. Like, I don't need to be talked to about what, you know, this is or that is. Like, I fucking understand, you know. And I think the general consensus is the same thing. Like, the people I've talked to, the people that I've read about on Reddit, the comments left on Reddit, like, if we were freshmen going into our very first year of higher education, I would understand, especially coming out of COVID. You know, kids junior and senior year of high school were probably online. You know, maybe even half their senior year was online. I don't know, but, like, if it's a transfer orientation, the absolute majority of us are going to be at least 20 years old, right? Assuming you just come from a high school into community college into university, you're going to be at least 20 years old. The majority. Depends on when your birthday is. I'm sure a lot of people were 19. I know there was a lot of people older than me. I know one lady had some gray hair. I know another dude, you could just tell he was an older gentleman. There was one person in my group who looked older than the rest of us. I don't know how old he was, but aside from that, honestly, I was probably the oldest person in my group at 24. But either way, you know, we're 20 years old. Like, we're adults. You know, we've been paying taxes. We've been paying maybe we have bills, you know. I know I have bills. You know, we've been living as an adult for at least 2 years, some of these people, right? So like a lot of this information we didn't need. So it was kind of useless. But after those 3 presentations, we had a break and then another student to student. I don't know why they specify that it's a break, because there's no other presentations after that. After that, it's a break, student to student, and then what they call the involvement fair, which was actually optional. And the involvement fair started technically at 4:25. I think they did it group by group. Our group, for some reason, we didn't actually end up going until like 5, and it was supposed to start at 4:25. I don't know if that's, again, because they do it by group, and our group just so happened to be the next group out there, but we were like the last people to be there, because there was a lot of people at the involvement fair. And the involvement fair is basically when a bunch of student organizations come and they put up their, you know, little things, their information spiels, and they have a couple of people out there to talk to the students, talk to the incoming transfers, and just try to get them to join, or, you know, whatever it is. But I only stayed for like maybe 10 more minutes, just kind of I have a few bookmarked clubs and organizations that I'm thinking about joining, or at least getting information for. They weren't represented there, so it was only like 15 groups, and UCR has over like 400 or something like that. But yeah, that's kind of a breakdown of transfer orientation for fall 2022. My personal experiences are this. I didn't take any notes, although I will say I wrote 2 things down. I don't consider these notes because one is a link and another one is kind of just like a 2-word reminder to do something. But other than that, I took 0 notes. And I had read before, and this was part of the outdated transfer orientation information, that I should bring a laptop. So I brought my laptop and I brought a notepad, and both of these things were extremely useless. I saw through the entire day, I saw one person, one singular individual write notes. One person. From what I saw, he had a regular 8x11 sheet of paper, just a regular piece of printer paper, and his notes were only about 1/3 of the way through the piece of paper. Might that have been his 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th page? Yeah, could have been. But that's the only person I ever saw take notes. I saw him at the first workshop that I went to, and he didn't take any notes during that workshop. He was sitting catty corner in my peripheral to my right, and he didn't take any notes that day, or that workshop rather. But yeah, those 2 things are useless. I will definitely say to bring water, wear shoes that are super comfortable and you're able to walk in. One person in my group actually just were wearing like the flip-flop slides, they're called, and he said that he should have brought something else to wear, but he only said one thing about it that I heard. I don't really know if he complained about it later on in the day, but he made a joke about it in the early morning, and that was the only thing I heard him say about it. But yeah, wear sneakers or tennis shoes. I wear Converse Chucks everywhere, so it doesn't matter. But those are comfortable for me. They're probably not comfortable for some other people, but they're comfortable for me, so that's what I wore. I would also say wear a hat. I wear hats anyway, so again, not an issue for me. But water. I would say don't bring it in a regular water bottle. Maybe if you do it in the winter or spring quarters, obviously it's not going to be hot as summer. But again, like, I bring water everywhere I go. You know, if I'm going down the street, I'll bring water with me in my car, whatever. So again, this wasn't a huge difference to my normal routine or my normal life, but I would say don't bring it in a regular water bottle because you're going to be walking out in the sun. I would say bring a hydro flask. If you bring a regular water bottle, it's going to be sitting in the sun. If it's in your pocket, that heat is going to bounce off of it, whatever. I'm not a STEM major, so I don't know how that science stuff works, but I would definitely say water, hat, obviously yourself. They say to bring an ID on the website. I didn't have to pull out my ID a single time. Even when I was checking in, all they asked for was my name, and they had it. And boom. I will also like to mention that if you registered family members, they're not going to be with you. I had this misunderstanding that since I registered 2 guests, my parents, that they'd be with me during orientation. It turns out that there's a thing called family orientation, which they failed to mention during initial registration was a thing, and only started talking about it about a week and a half before the actual orientation. And I still wasn't sure if that was a different orientation or if that was an actual thing that was already registered for because of the previous registration. Turns out that, yeah, if you register guests, they're going to family orientation. It's kind of a miscommunication or misinformation, if you even want to put it that way, because I had this understanding that all family members were going to be with their student during orientation. No. So keep that in mind. I would also say, like, don't be afraid to be social. I know that a lot of people are shy. A lot of people have maybe some social anxiety or you know, whatever the case may be. I would say that, you know, we're in this thing together. Transfers, from what I've read about UCR demographics, make up the lowest amount of student population on the UCR campus. Transfers are unique. We have half of our career education already done when we're going to school. Around half, of course. You know, most of us are not experiencing all new things, right? Yeah, being on a university campus is a lot different than a community college, sure. But we have already lived part of college experiences as a whole. So we're a unique demographic, and we're all there for the same reason. We're all there to get an education. You will be grouped with people in your major. So talking about your major, I can almost guarantee that I'm going to see people in my classes who I was in orientation with. I can almost guarantee it. So don't be afraid to talk. Don't be afraid to be social. Don't be afraid to reach out to even your OL. You're going to be in the group of your major. So talking about your major, relating to your major, that's totally cool and okay. A couple of things that I would like to mention from Reddit. I just took screenshots of some of the posts and comments that I've seen that have been helpful. There's no talk or like mentioning of registering for classes. That's going to be an entire virtual session that we had already registered for while we registered for the first session as well. I had hoped and was optimistic that there would be some sort of presentation about how to register, what to look out for when we're registering, and what the first step should be for registration and what classes. There's no talk of that at all. Not in any single presentation is there any talking of classes, registration, nothing. Some other people say that there was an issue with parking. So personally, they give you a code, right? They give everyone a code, and personally, I had to input the code 3 or 4 times before the code actually input the website to allow me to register for parking. Everyone parks in the same exact parking structure, and from what I saw, nobody was actually actively searching for registration on the vehicle. Now, I'm not saying don't register, because they tell you to register, so make sure you register, but there was nobody actively checking for registration. So if all else fails, your parking code won't submit or whatever, do what you got to do. That's what I'll say. Somebody said wear comfortable clothing as the chairs are uncomfortable. I previously kind of spoke on that. Yeah. Somebody said that that they were annoyed that it's not closer to when classes start and they're making attendance mandatory when some people haven't even moved in yet. And yeah, a lot of people on both online and in person have been complaining about the housing situation, and I feel like making the orientation mandatory is a mistake. It's a good way to get your art card if you did your photo and all that, which I did. I have my art card with me over there, but that was really the only benefit I got from going. I didn't connect with anyone long enough from my group to have like a friendship. I only spoke to my OL like 3 times. That dude I met, Zach, he was cool, but I didn't get any information from him, like social media or a phone number or anything. My parents didn't get any information that was beneficial to them. It just, making something like that mandatory, especially having us pay, and then being like, oh, you get free lunch, Well, we had to pay for that lunch, right? Like, registration's $100. Like, it's not a free lunch. But just making us have it to pay and make it mandatory. I went to Highlander Day, and it's like the exact same information. It's not a beneficial thing. Somebody had even complained that their online orientation was also useless, and even though it was online, they still had to pay. I think it was a waste of time. Somebody said, quote, I found a majority of it unnecessary, end quote. I'll also say that somebody had brought up with the point of icebreakers. Apparently, they didn't want to do icebreakers. My OL never did icebreakers. I heard some OLs did, but it wasn't pushy. And some other OLs didn't do any at all. So if icebreakers are something you're worried about, it entirely depends on the OL. But I will say that chances are there will be no icebreaker for you. Somebody said it's just common sense stuff. It is. The lectures are just common sense. Some people were asking about masks and vaccination requirements. Masks were completely optional, and your vaccination requirements, they say, need to already have been submitted and approved before that day of orientation. However, nobody was checking. Nobody asked. You don't need to show a COVID card or anything like that, and nobody even discussed it or talked about it. So I think that's pretty much relied upon on the patient portal, the student health services patient portal, or whatever it's called. And speaking of our card, I spoke about our card earlier. I had heard from one person who was not an OL. It was just a random student, so take it with a grain of salt. But if you don't have your R card and didn't submit a picture for the R card in the previous week before orientation, then supposedly they were actually taking pictures of people and printing it on the R card that day. So I would ask your OL about it if you don't get your R card. I ran into a couple people who didn't have it, and they were asking about it. I only heard one transfer student talk about it, not an OL, not somebody who worked at Student Life, nobody. It was just a random student who said that they were taking pictures upstairs. And the third hub story, don't know if it's true, but if you need one, ask your OL. Alright, to end the video, I guess I'll talk about some positives. One, I really liked being on campus. I think anytime I'm on campus before classes start is going to be beneficial to me in the long run. I actually told this story to previously mentioned Zach, where my first day of high school I actually got lost, and I felt like a complete idiot because I actually asked the supervisor where a specific building was, and it ended up being right to my right. And I was like, oh my god, like, I'm so stupid. But literally the second day, from that point on, I never got lost again. My senior year of high school, I actually ended up working for the counseling department. I was walking in every single alleyway, pathway, classroom that was available to walk in at that school, and I think to this day I could still walk my entire high school blindfolded and be perfectly fine. If tables and stuff are set up exactly the same, of course, but I'm sure university is going to be the same way. Like, universities are way bigger. I mean, they're basically mini cities, right? Walkable cities. And UCR actually isn't even the biggest UC campus, but with that said, it is still a huge campus. And I think it might take a few weeks to know exactly where I'm going all the time. But anytime you're able to visualize and physically be at a location, you're going to learn it better than being like online or looking at pictures or looking at videos. I mean, I could take this camera and walk every single inch of the UCR campus, and you would not memorize it or be exactly knowledgeable about where you're going unless you're actually there. At least that's how I am. Like, being on campus, walking around, that was the absolute positive part of it. It was great to see some of the people that will be in my class, right? Since we're all incoming transfers, a lot of us are going to be graduating at the same time, you know. A lot of us, you know, especially in my group, are going to be taking classes together, and like, who knows, a lot of these people could be, you know, prospective friends for life. And I think that was cool. I also think the involvement fair was cool. I personally was not interested in browsing around, but I think it's good that they it's like a very miniature Club Rush, if that's something you're into. It's like a very, very, very mini Club Rush. Again, there was about 15 clubs / organizations there, and honestly, like 3 or 4 of them were UCR official. So the Veterans Resource Center was there, the Business Services was there, and the Education Abroad Center was there. So I don't remember if any other UCR official organizations were there, but those 3 were. And aside from that, it was all just student organizations or clubs. So that's really cool if that's what you're interested in. But overall, the very, very main positive thing that I found at orientation is just walking around the campus, physically seeing locations. And again, I was there on Highlander Day, so I knew a little bit about the area. Like, I knew where Hub was. I always used the bell tower to know where I was going, which I guess is kind of like a thing that everyone does there or something. But yeah, I mean, it was good to walk on campus, see some of the buildings I'll be going to classes or workshops or whatever, and just being there, right? Everything else was fucking stupid. It was worthless. It was a total waste of money, and they really, really, really should not make it mandatory. If anybody important at UCR watches this, please don't kick me out of school. I liked being there, and if it wasn't mandatory, I would still go. I really would. I went to Highlander Day. That was not mandatory, but I wanted to go. And maybe had I not gone to Highlander Day and gone to this instead, I would have... Highlander Day was a complete positive experience. I have nothing bad to say about it. So maybe if I didn't go to Highlander Day, I'd be praising orientation instead. But I just think that orientation is a waste of money, and it shouldn't be mandatory. That's exactly how I feel about it. I think the OLs, they have training, and they take time out of their summer to train and to work with us to answer questions. So good for them, good for student life. They did a good job. The organization isn't great. I don't think that's wholly at the fault of student life, though. That's, you know, that's just part of the university, I'm sure. But aside from that, I only have like 1 or 2 positive things to say about the day. So I really hope this video is helpful. I really hope that this is available and is good information for the future quarters to come. So thanks for watching. I appreciate it. And come back if you ever want to see some more videos. Thanks.